Right, Truss at 10.
Sure. This is the latest book from the esteemed political biographer Sir Anthony Seldon. It's out today. It looks in depth at Liz Truss's 49 days as Prime Minister.
One of the shocking claims in the book is that she considered cutting cancer treatments to fund tax cuts. Her Chancellor at the time was, of course, Kwasi Kwarteng, and he spoke to Nigel Farage on GB News last night.
I can categorically state we never talked about reducing cancer treatment. Why would, I mean, it would have been absurd politically to have done that anyway.
Earlier on today, you said, I wasn't involved in any conversations about restricting healthcare.
That's true.
But that doesn't mean the Prime Minister and her team didn't discuss this. You're chucking her under the bus.
No, I'm not.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
I'm not doing that. I'm saying,
I'm sorry,
very careful.
I think so.
I was very careful in my wording.
Didn't look very careful to me.
There was. I said I didn't have any of those conversations, but if those conversations took place in other bits of the government, I wasn't privy to them. I didn't know about that. That's what I'm saying.
I mean, Seldon is a renowned biographer. This is quite a claim, isn't it?
Yes, I'm surprised that he made that claim, and also it wasn't sourced. I mean, I think the official that they, or the special advisor they quoted, said we were looking at expenditure cuts. I don't think he said that we were specifically looking at reducing cancer treatment, which would have been an outrage. I mean, it would have been morally wrong.
Well, the esteemed biographer, it really is political biographer, Sir Anthony Seldon joins us now. Sir Anthony, morning to you. That is a pretty explosive allegation to make against the former Prime Minister. You obviously can't tell us who you spoke to, but you're certain it's true. She actually contemplated banning or restricting cancer treatments on the NHS to save cash. That would have been politically catastrophic.
Yeah, so what happened was that following the absolute catastrophe of the mini-budget and the reaction against it, suddenly there had to be a £72 billion of cuts that had to be made, and officials came up with a list of cuts that had to be made and could be made, a shopping list, and cuts to cancer treatment on the NHS was on that list. Now, that was obviously a drastic scenario. How seriously did Liz Truss see that list? I would assume that she would have done. She was certainly saying, I don't believe that cuts can't be made. That was one of the things that she was saying. But she was not herself advocating it. It was just one of the things that her disastrous, and Kwarteng's disastrous budget had put this country in. I mean, to put a perspective on that, George Osborne's austerity involved about £30 billion of cuts. This was 73 billion, so over double the incredible austerity post-2010. So it was drastic, and it called for some really drastic possible measures. So they saw that list. We can only assume that they would have read the information that they were given.
Sure.
The book doesn't suggest that she was herself advocating that. It's just that she was advocating severe cuts. And as we then know, other things happened, and she decided to cut Kwasi Kwarteng, her own Chancellor.
Sir Anthony, your book is also, it's devastating about her 49 days in office. She effectively failed every single test you set. Sum up why she was such a bad Prime Minister.
Because she didn't have the right character. She modelled herself on Ronald Reagan and on Margaret Thatcher, but she didn't appear to have learnt that Margaret Thatcher took up to 2 years preparing the ground for the radical policies like the 1981 budget and the subsequent policies that came. You can't just come in, any leader can't come in and try and make massively significant changes without preparing people. You can blame the system and say that they're all against you, but that's not what leaders do. It's not what Margaret Thatcher did. The successful leaders in British history.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry we have to interrupt you. Her tenure was short. That interview was also too short. But we have got to say goodbye, Anthony Seldon.
Oh, all right, let's see. Let's see what's making the news this morning with former special advisor to Michael Gove, Charlie Rowley, and former Labour advisor Scarlett Maguire, who's just guaranteed her next slot on.
I know, because I think you're in your early 40s.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I was surprised at the grey hair.
Yeah.
You're approaching 40, aren't you?
Approaching 40 rapidly from the wrong direction.
Very good.
Right, Charlie, let's have a look at Nigel Farage, who says Kwasi Kwarteng, who was Chancellor briefly, is throwing Liz Truss under the bus. Let's just have a quick listen to this.
Remember, I can categorically state we never talked about reducing cancer treatment. Why would, I mean, it would have been absurd politically to have done that anyway.
Earlier on today, you said, I wasn't involved in any conversations about restricting healthcare.
That's true.
But that doesn't mean the Prime Minister and her team didn't discuss this. You're chucking her under the bus.
No, I'm not.
Yes,
I'm
you
not
are.
doing that.
Yes, you are.
I'm not doing that. What I'm saying,
I'm
being
sorry,
very
but I
careful.
think so.
I was very careful in my wording. I said,
What do you reckon, Charlie?
Well, very carefully and clearly distancing himself from Liz Truss, if not throwing under the bus, as Nigel Farage put it. I would put it as he was distancing himself there because he was very... well, he was in lockstep with Liz Truss in terms of the economy. They were the two who had a vision about the economy, how things should change, whether you should be opening up to the markets, whether you should be cutting tax radically. Now, all things which every Tory can get behind, but the scale and the pace in which they attempted to do all of that obviously shook the markets and led to a disastrous mini-budget, and therefore we know what happened ever since. So I think, obviously, when you are so close to the Prime Minister because of that project, you would have thought you talked about everything that required funding or not. And so when it emerged in a book that's coming out by Anthony Seldon that Liz Truss was considering cutting public funding for effectively, for cancer patients and cancer services, because there is a lot of debt in the NHS and it obviously requires a lot of money. I mean, it's an absurd policy, as Kwasi was right to say. I think he's clearly just distancing himself from that. But the revelation itself that the former Prime Minister Liz Truss was even considering. Now, she may deny it, but remains to be seen. But if that is the case, then it would be almost unbelievable. I mean, I can't think of, anything worse or anything in a situation where, we have the NHS in this country where there are issues.
Do we believe it or not?
Well, I mean, Anthony Seldon is somebody who does do his homework. I find it so shocking that, there would have been a rebellion. There would have been a rebellion in Parliament, but there would have been a total uprising if you're not going to pay for cancer. I think, to be fair on Kwasi Kwarteng, I think, as he said, he was very careful with his words, as he'd never heard it, but it doesn't mean that she wasn't thinking about it. If I was him, he's quite bitter, she threw him under a bus to try and survive. So I think it's fair enough that he goes, because the hidden thing is, look, she's so bonkers, she could have done anything, right? But I didn't know about it.
Scarlett, let's stay with you, shall we, and look at the front page of the Times. And this is about the overcrowding crisis in prisons. Yeah. And a mass release of inmates.
OK, so...
Reportedly.
Yeah, no, well, there is going to be a massive release of inmates. We know that there isn't enough room in the prisons for the people that there are. There are many more coming down the track because of the riots. Most of the people who pleaded guilty have gone to jail, but we have all the people who are pleading not guilty who still have to, some of whom will be guilty, and go. To be fair, what's going to happen is, so this is what they're saying, is that for some people, once they've served 40% of their sentence, they will be let out. I am assuming they'll be let out with an ankle thing, so that
some will, some won't. They might not have enough.
Well, I think they'll probably make a lot of money will go to the ankle people, the anklets that go round. But what's really important is none of these people will be violent. right, or none of these people will have a history of violence. They will not be in for violent things.
But it raises the question, doesn't it? Why are we sending people to prison for a tweet when we're then having to let people out to make room for them?
Well, I mean, the people that we're letting out have served some time, and most of the people are not being sent to jail for tweets. I mean, as far as I remember, there's one person who's been sent for jail for a tweet. She did say, you know, I hope the mosque burns down with the adults in it. I mean, it was... I mean, I think one can say that that was pretty hate-filled, and this isn't about free speech. This is about... so in America, years and years ago, they said the definition of free speech is you can say whatever you want, but you cannot say fire in a crowded theatre because that would cause chaos. And I think you cannot say, you know, I think a mosque, let's burn down a mosque. So I think that's different. But I think also the person saying there is going to be problems, of course, is the head of the probation service. And what they're saying is actually we can't deal with all these people. Remember, the probation service has been hollowed out. I mean, it's been one of the problems.
They can't deal with people they've got now.
Yeah.
But it's already at 99% capacity, isn't it? Now we're hearing there's only 100 spaces left in male prisons.
And the other thing about the probation service is that Martin Jones, the head, has said that, you know, we don't have enough people to monitor the people who are now being released early. So we never know what these people are going to do. And I think there should have been, perhaps, of course you need to build more prisons. There's been a failure not to build those prison places in the past. But there must be other things and more creative thinking. I mean, we could stand up things like the Nightingale service at the NHS pretty quickly when it came to COVID. Now, I'm not suggesting that you can all of a sudden just build a prison in a day, but, you know, there must be alternatives where these people can continue to do community service as a replacement for fulfilling the rest of their prison sentence. Something if they're going to be not just released willy-nilly into the...
Or more probation officers. So if these 5,500 reportedly are going to be released in the next few weeks,
certainly
they reoffend.
But the weird thing is they closed Holloway Prison, right? Instead of turning it into a male prison, they just closed it and they've sold it off. I mean, this was done a few years ago.
Yeah. OK, look, thank you both. We'll see you a little bit later on.